Thanks, everyone. Um, I'd like to keep this a fairly interactive session because I'm sure that, it would merit everyone to have a discussion rather than a sort of one-way traffic from my side. So I'll keep my remarks quite short and sweet, and then I'd like to open it up to questions, and then we can all have a chat about what's going on. Just in keeping with the theme of, what we're discussing today, which is really about the emergence of digital media and the fact that, we're in an environment today. I think we'll just wait for that bell to. Unless it's a fire alarm, in which case we should all be out of here. Should I just keep going? Okay, cool. So just in keeping with, the theme of the discussion today, which is around digital media and the changes that it has had. When I came into the movie business in around 2005 or so, the streams of revenue were obviously theatrical, India and overseas. We had music, we had home video, and that was pretty much it. Other than certain ancillary rights, we had airline rights and we had, stuff of that nature. Netflix was still delivering DVDs to households, and digital was like something far off into the future that we put under new media and that we put into presentations to investors talking about the value of IP and how it would develop, half of which we didn't even believe ourselves. So, now cut to 17 years later, and we're looking at the environment today, and we know how much that has all been upended. And I think, a lot of us in this room have been witness to those changes. So it is pretty amazing how, 1 year in media is the equivalent of 7 years. And when I'm talking about 17 years, it's really a lifetime. Today, if you go into any production house or any studio, it would be really, like an anomaly if they did not really start talking about their series slate and their straight to OTT movie slate before they got into their theatrical slate. And that's because we all know what's been happening in the theatrical market over the last few years. It's been very tough going. Obviously a pandemic hasn't helped, but there were signs of there being an issue even before that in terms of, we are a very value conscious country. And when our, when our audiences are going to be having the plethora of content that's available to them today, at the same cost of the price of a single movie ticket, and I'm being a little extreme here, but it's not that off the mark, when they can annually have access to movies and shows from around the world at the same cost of one person's movie ticket, that becomes a very difficult proposition for a theatrical movie to justify. And that actually has been why you've seen such a change in the kinds of genres that are working theatrically today, and that change has happened really, really fast. But the fact is that today, from a content creator's perspective and from a filmmaker's perspective, from an artist's perspective, from writers, directors, it's the best time to be making content. And I'm saying making content quite broadly because that includes movies, it includes series, it includes pretty much everything. A show like Rocket Boys, which we were able to do, would never have been able to even be conceived in the past as a film that we could tell on the big screen. It was a story of two scientists, it was a story of their trials and tribulations. It just doesn't make what in sort of conventional terms would be considered to be a compelling theatrical experience. So for a writer and a director of that show, what could be a better time than this to be telling those stories, because they can actually tell stories they would never have been able to tell earlier. For producers, and it is a little more difficult, because you're today in an environment where things that came quite naturally to you to greenlight in the past because they were either high concept or they were really cutting edge or they were something that comes from left field and you thought, wow, this is something that can definitely work theatrically, are today propositions that you'll find very hard to greenlight theatrically. And I'll give you a couple of examples. When we started UTV Spotboy in around 2007, we were looking at content that would never have been created for cinema earlier, things like Devdi and A Wednesday and Pansing Tomar and films like that, that audiences that had come back to the multiplexes after years of staying out because of not very good facilities within cinemas, because of a video boom that allowed them to watch movies on VCR, were coming back into theaters, and we were now being able to make movies like that for them. Those same audiences today would not come to a cinema to watch a Devdi or a Wednesday or a Pansing Tomar, because those are movies that they would rather watch at home in the comfort of the sort of convenience that they have on offer on an OTT platform. What they would come for would be a cinematic experience, something with spectacle, something that would make them want to get off their sofa, book that ticket, get into a car, find parking, wait in a line, wait for the ads, wait for the intermission and the 20 minutes, head out for dinner afterwards. A very, very expensive and, frankly, in the sort of facilities that we have in our cities, a pretty mind-numbing traffic come, experiential exercise to go through. So that's what we are contending with today. And it's disconcerting, obviously, but it's also very exciting because I think we need to embrace technology when it presents itself. And I don't think anyone's ever won a battle with technology that actually works for the audience. And however much you might try to romanticize or create nostalgia around an experience of the past, you have to realize that today, when audiences have been given the advantage of the sort of convenience that is on offer to them, they can watch what they want, when they want, how they want, in the intervals that they want, with the number of breaks that they want to watch it in. You can't go back from that. And if you have to really create something theatrical and cinematic, you need to be able to create something that's going to compel the audience to come to the cinema screens to watch it. Which is why a film like Brahmastra, for example, and I'm sure everyone has wildly differing views on the quality of the film, the kind of film it is, etc., etc. But the fact is that it's done tremendous business on the weekend, right? And that means that it was able to draw audiences in for the sheer spectacle of what was promised. I'm not saying every theatrical experience has got to be Brahmastra, but you definitely have got to give audiences a very compelling reason why to come and watch. And now when you look at the digital side of things, what I think more and more we need to be able to do is be able to make sure that the quality of what we put out there is sustainable enough to not have audiences experience fatigue, because we're seeing it already. Even on digital, when you look at short films or series or movies, you're competing with Reels today, you're competing with TikTok videos, you're competing with viral YouTube content, you're competing with so many different things other than produced entertainment that audiences are being able to get their entertainment from, and being able to, again, sample in short bite-sized, sort of pockets. Attention spans have come down significantly. So I would say that while one industry is disrupting another, it in turn is being disrupted by different modes and forms of content that today are being consumed by audiences that we might not have earlier considered to be entertainment, but they are frankly entertainment, because how many hours in a day does a person have to be able to indulge in, content consumption? You're competing with all kinds of content today. So very, very exciting times for audiences, very exciting times for filmmakers, very nerve-wracking but also exciting times for media executives and producers. But I guess that's why we're all in this business, right? We enjoy the anxiety that goes into the creation of something spectacular that can wow people, and also the dread that it won't work and therefore you might fall off the cliff. I think that's why we're all in this business and not, working in a bank or an insurance company. So let's embrace it, let's enjoy it, and let's look to the future to be able to just create great stuff that people want to watch on whatever platform we can create it for. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to open it up to questions if any.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Siddharth. Being, coming from a finance fraternity, if, you could throw light, whatever you briefed was awesome on the consumer side, but if we talk on the business side, actually, how good it's making a sense going on to OTT as compared to the box office. Is it a boon that actually, you don't have to wait for the public to judge, and you actually, make profits early release, or, it's a pain, or it's both? I want to know your comments on that.
It's a good question and a fair one. I think I can't deny that for a lot of people, not having that box office report card has been a bit of a breather over the last few years, because the fact is that your content has come onto an OTT platform and there's only social media and PR buzz around how well or how badly it's done, but there's no numerical report card to say hit, flop, etc., etc. So it has come as a little bit of a breather to many creative people as well as to producers. But honestly, I don't think we can deny that there is a report card out there somewhere, right? The platform knows how well it's done for them. They're either going to want to keep working with you or not, working with that director or not, working with those actors or not, depending on how well or how badly the price-value equation has worked out for them in terms of what they've paid you for that piece of content. So while temporarily it might be nice not to have that tag of hit or flop on your content, there's always going to be a report card, whether you like it or not. Also, I think the last couple of years, it was a very, very exceptional, situation where you had theaters not open or not open completely, and therefore a lot of content was going straight to OTT. That's changed now completely. I think all of you in this room who are either working with platforms or working on the production side of things would know that that is a significant change now. And now the theaters are back, I think a lot of platforms actually want you to release your movies theatrically and then come onto their platform, because then they benefit from the marketing exposure that a movie gets when it's released theatrically, and then they don't need to do the same when it comes onto the platform once again later. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question.
But for the movies actually who are just releasing on OTT and not on the screens, like in olden days, risk was more of distributors rather than producers. But now actually, is it that the OTT platforms have more risk, or is it the producer who will be taking the entrepreneurship role?
So there are some movies that are commissioned by platforms as straight to digital movies. So that's the equivalent of a series, because the IP is owned by the platform, and then it happens to be a movie and not a series. For movies that are created and then go straight to OTT after, sort of post facto, and choose not to go the theatrical route, it depends on the situation at that point of time about whether you believe and whether the platform believes that there's value to be had on both sides. So there's no right or wrong answer about which way you should be going. I dare say now that that bridge has been crossed in the last couple of years, we won't be going back from that. So there'll be some movies that release theatrically, some that are made with an intention of releasing theatrically that you finally realize that no, actually we should be going straight to OTT. Some of those might or might not be bought by the platform, so you might be compelled to go theatrically if you can't sell it. There'll be all kinds of models in the future.
That has been quite evolved and quite amazing to hear you.
Thank you.
Siddharth, the theatrical proposition that you spoke about, and given that the Indian market is at a particular stage of evolution, right, between what's happening between the theatrical proposition as well as OTT and therefore the push and pull, I would assume that there are global markets which are at a particular stage of evolution where consumers come back to the theatrical proposition. And is that only based then on the cinematic experience that you spoke of? Or what else is working where consumers are going back to theaters in some of those markets? Because I would suspect that that's what's going to happen a couple of years down the line where the imbalance starts getting corrected.
So the best I can give you is an educated guess right now, because I think we're in the throes of that change at this point of time. So for me to say with any definitive clarity that this is exactly what it is would be wrong, and I'd be sort of, sort of remiss in saying that I know the exact answer to that. But I definitely think that what seems to be working theatrically is the spectacle, the cinematic experience, something that's immersive, something that you can't have, at home in terms of the same experience of that piece of content. But also things that people enjoy watching in a communal atmosphere together with a bunch of people. So it could be horror, it could be horror comedy, it could be really slapstick entertainment where you enjoy watching that in a large hall with a group of people all sort of laughing your butts off. That kind of a thing, right? But I think the lighter comedies or the dramas or the more meditative pieces, the more thoughtful pieces, the more maybe intellectual pieces, the more intense, sort of pieces of work, that might move much more to OTT than ever before. That move was happening already, but I think COVID, created sort of a precipitous change in audiences' tastes, and because habits were broken, in the course of those 2 years. What they now will come back for will be something that the bar is pretty high. So they might enjoy drama, but they might very well say, I'll watch it in 8 weeks when it comes onto a platform. I don't need to go and watch it in a cinema hall because now my habit's been broken, So that change, I think we as filmmakers need to accept has happened.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Siddharth.
Hi.
As lay people, and I'm a marketeer, we hear about how the OTT platforms do a lot of research into what people want to watch, and even their album art, so to speak, changes based on my watching history and so on. Is any of that data, if it's true, does any of that get either shared with you or applied to you guys while discussing the premises that you're pitching to them and so on and so forth? Because as a marketeer, when we do research, I'm very suspicious of, because we know this from research also and from great books like Everybody Lies, that when you ask people, they lie to you. It's only their behavior that tells the truth. So how do you apply, because you guys are doing a fantastic job of getting the pulse of audiences, you're producing stuff that people end up loving, even when they didn't know they wanted it. Squid Games, for example. No, you couldn't have researched it and told us, and we would have told you that, yes, we want to see it.
True. It's a great question. I'll actually answer it in two parts. To start with, yes, they definitely have all that data, and it's very, very rich data, because that research sample is all their subscribers, right? They actually have access to every subscriber, how long that subscriber has watched a piece of content, when the drop-offs happened, how long the intervals were between the drop-off and the time they came back. It's very, very rich data, and I wouldn't even say it's research, it's actually real-time user experience data that you're getting in sort of real time, and the analysis that you can draw from that for them is really pretty incredible, if they're able to hone that and use it in the right way. What they tend to share with the creators, though, is a subset of that data. You will know whether your show's done well or not done well. You'll know which parts of it seem to resonate better based on the drop-offs. When drop-offs happened, did it happen firstly in the first 5 minutes? Did it happen after episode 1? Did it happen a little later? Things like that. But I think there's a certain proprietary sense to that data that platforms have, because they do believe that that gives them a bit of a competitive advantage. And you as a producer are working with multiple platforms. So their desire to share all of that data with you is pretty low. But what they do share with you is what they think will help you create a better next season for them, right? What they might not share with you is any leverage that gives you leverage over them in a negotiation going forward, because they don't really want you to know how well your show did, because then you might act pricier than you would otherwise. To your second question around research, you're quite right, and I think Steve Jobs said it best, right? You don't know what someone wants till you give it to them, and then when they wouldn't have realized that they'd wanted it in the first place. But I'm not part of that group that dismisses all research into what we do, because there are some creative people who believe that, listen, I just want to make something and then I'm putting it out and I think the audience will like it or not, then it's my artistic expression. I think for any of us who are in show business, it's show and it's business, right? It's a combination of the two. So I think it would be silly of us not to look at research and see how it can help us. We shouldn't take it as binary. It's not black or white. There's some things that are outliers that you don't need to take into account. But if a preponderance of people are telling you a certain thing, and that seems to resonate across large sets of people that you've researched, you have to assume that that's something that you can fix in your content, and you should. So I actually think focus groups do help you quite a bit. When you have a close to ready cut of your film, I think it can really help you to be able to hone it in the right way. But you're right, to tell you what to make, I think there you would be going wrong in trying to ask people to tell you whether, would you watch a show on two scientists? I'm not sure anyone would have told us that they would.
Super. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. You spoke about meditative pieces making a comeback in sort of the OTT world. There was a beautiful platform like QTV World Movies around 12 years back that probably a very select set of audiences would watch. Do you think it will make a comeback to the OTT world in some form or manner in the future? Because it did curate a lot of meditative pieces from world over for the Indian audiences.
So, I don't think it'll ever come back as a channel, because I don't think a channel business is sustainable in that sense. But platforms today have so much world cinema on them, and I know that audiences are consuming that content quite extensively. Across the country, especially in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of consumption of Korean especially, but also European, I think also Japanese. So it's happening, but it's happening as part of a larger sort of content offering where you also get world cinema and you get world series to be able to watch.
Hi, Siddharth. Here.
Hi.
Hi. In the previous session, Ekta was speaking about how the craze for big movie stars still remains even on the OTT. Now, you had Aranyak and, of course, Rocket Boys. On one side, there was a Bollywood star making her Bollywood digital debut with Aranyak. As a producer, how do you balance it out? And do you think big movie stars will remain the selling factor even on OTT?
I think there's no doubt that stars sell. So I think Ekta is absolutely right when she says that. We are a star-driven culture in many ways. What has happened though is so many new stars have come up because of OTT platforms. And I think there's a blurring of lines between the big movie stars and the big stars that have worked on OTT platforms today. So I think today a Nawaz and a Pankaj are stars in their own right, which probably in another era a few years ago, they'd be considered very good character actors, but would not be considered stars or would not be considered a draw. But, for that big box office success, of course a star is important, but that too is changing. I think if you look at Pushpa, having done 100 crores in Hindi, Allu Arjun he was now better known in Hindi markets because he was on television in the dubbed versions of the Telugu films that a lot of audiences have watched, but by no means a Hindi movie star. And for that film to still go ahead and do 100 crores, for KGF to go into 400 plus crores, I think that tells you that now there are movies that are being able to work if they are high concept and ambitious enough, even without a very, very well-known star, which was not the case in the past at all. So I only see that as a positive. But do movie stars help? Of course they do. Is that it? Super. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Sorry, I think there's one.
Seems like there are more questions, Sid. Okay, all right.
When writers want to pitch shows to you, what's your modus operandi? Do you read or do you listen? Get them to listen? And if you only will listen, like Ekta says, then how do you decide who to make time for?
Who to make time for? That's a good question. No, we read and listen. I think some writers prefer to narrate because they like to infuse you with the energy of what they're narrating, etc. So then we give them a chance to narrate. If a writer would like us to read, then we read. So it really depends on what the writer's more comfortable with.
And how does a noob break through?
How does?
How does a newbie break through into getting a shot at?
I wouldn't say there's any 100% because there are limited numbers of production houses and a lot of people with a lot of material. So some of it is chance, and I won't deny that. But we try to have a little bit of a structured way to do it, where we have an email where people can reach out and send us a mail. We send them what we call a release form. They sign that. They send it back along with their submission. So there's a structured way to do it, but does everyone easily have access? Unfortunately, there's no foolproof system.
Thanks.
I think there's one question there.
Hi, Siddharth.
Hi.
Siddharth, what do you think films or web series which actually rolls the balls for OTT?
Which, sorry?
Web series or movies, films on OTT, which one for you actually rolls the ball for OTT?
Like, what do I prefer?
Yes.
That way? I would have, like 5 years ago, I would have said movies easily, but when you look at the quality of some of the series out there and the fact that those are not stories you'd ever be able to watch otherwise, I have to say that, it's really now down to each piece of material. So it's hard. It's hard for one to make a selection between the two. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.